Hello, I'm Mariam. I'm a resilience coach. And today I would like to talk about this thing that we hear a lot about, listening to our gut feeling. And the way this connects to what I talk about, which is resilience, and the formula for resilience, which is resilience equals creativity plus decision making. So a lot of times when people talk about resilience, they think of it as being strong. But I actually disagree. I think that resilience is about creating. It's about creating your desired life and then making the right decisions for your life. The reason I say that is because we're all vulnerable. We cannot be strong. Strength is not what determines our success. It's about our mindset and the stories that we tell ourselves, the thoughts that we have, and the decisions that we make. This is how we create the life that we want. It's not, we're not Hercules or boxers in a ring that where we need to be super strong. We have to be strong with our mind, and that is what resilience means: understanding how the mind works and creating our desired life from that point of view. So a lot of the decisions that we make are driven by our gut feeling, right? People say things like, listen to your gut is never wrong. And I actually 100% agree. Because when I look at the things which I have been very successful in, it's because I had the gut that I followed and I thought, this is what I need to do. And in situations where I have missed the mark, it's because I ignored my gut. So I'll give an example. I've talked about the father of my child and how he is one of the biggest challenges I've faced in my life. And I remember the first date when we went on the date, and at the time I was not aware as I am today. I was still on the short term thinking of, I just want to meet a partner, so I just want to tick off the box because I'm 35. So when I went on the date with him, I remember, first of all, that I was the only one talking in the car. So he created this sort of illusion of safety at the time where I could just keep talking about what I wanted, and he was taking a lot of information, but it wasn't a two-way street. So that pointed back to something in me where I was empty or void, right? So I didn't have enough of my own strength to carry me. So I needed someone else to sort of fill that void that I had. So, and I remember what happened when my gut kicked in was when he suddenly just put his hand on my thigh on the very first date as we were driving to the restaurant. I had just met him for the first time. And I remember my gut telling me that he didn't like it. So I had a reaction, but I ignored it. I ignored the reaction because I went straight to my intellect, and my intellect said to me, he has a good education, he has a good job, he has good economics, he's been married before, he has family. So what could be wrong with this? So I ignored my gut, which was trying to protect me, because the gut is always trying to protect you. And the gut is also thinking long term. So your gut is thinking for your long term benefit. It makes you understand that this is not the thing for you that's going to make you succeed in the long term. But your intellect often sometimes goes in the short term because it just wants to get rid of your the intellect is actually neutral, but it's your other emotions that go into the short term. So because you have been feeling a bit lonely, a bit uncomfortable, so those other emotions can cloud your gut and can also explain it to your intellect. And then your intellect just it's like ChatGPT, your intellect just tells you everything that, summarizes for you the whole thing. So in that situation, so the ideal situation would have been me listening to my gut and then my intellect then affirming the gut, right? So you want your gut and your intellect to be aligned. So the intellect can then say, hey, Mariam, you know what? You don't see yourself growing old with this person. He doesn't make you feel safe in that moment. He didn't make you feel safe. And no. And actually he's love bombing you and giving you gifts and everything. But most healthy relationships start slow and go organically. So the intellect, the gut could have been aligned with my intellect in that way. So you have to be aware of when we ignore our gut with short-term thinking to then explain something to our intellect. So the other way I did it was, no, nothing could be wrong. He has all the boxes ticked off. I'll be proud to present all his life's achievements. So the other short-term thinking, using the intellect to ignore the gut rather than to support the gut. And then being aware of the other emotions. So there's intellect, there's other distracting emotions as well. So the lonely emotions, the feelings of being not enough, or feeling like you have to please other people. It could be a number of things for a number of, for me it was mainly feeling I was alone, that I wasn't enough. Yeah, those were the feelings, and not understanding myself enough. I didn't have the tools or the role models at the time. So another example recently was, I do a lot of video content. So I contacted an old video editor of mine. I've never actually met him. He lives in another country. I don't want to say the country because it's nothing about the country. It's really about the people. So this person had worked for me before, many years ago, on another project. And I got in touch with this person and I said, hey, you know what? Are you free right now? I've got some editing I need help with. And he's like, sure, sure, sure. And then he charged me a lot of money. And I thought, what, just because I live in the UAE, you know, how much are you charging me? So I said, sorry, the business is new and I'm growing. This is my budget. And then what happened was he immediately started to ask me other favors. So he started to ask me whether him and his wife and kid could come and live with me and so on. And I remember feeling uncomfortable with that, because I was like, I don't think this person is treating me as a professional client, because he thinks maybe he knows me for many years. And my gut was telling me not to do business with him anymore. But then I went in my intellect, because I started at my other emotions. I was like, oh, and he showed me his baby. That was a trick, because he showed me his child on the camera, and then, you know, you get this bonding and so on. And I went ahead and paid, because I just wanted the job done so I could move on to other things. But then everything my gut was telling me turned out to be right, because he ended up ghosting me. No refund of the money, and I still haven't got the edits. And he's not picking up his phone. So just sharing this for the lesson of when we ignore our gut. Because in that instant, it wasn't necessarily my intellect, it was my other emotional ties to him, having known him many years and so on, seeing him and his new baby, you know, living in a developing country. I just felt like, oh, you know, I'm sure he's not gonna do me wrong. But what my gut was telling me, that he was crossing my boundaries, because the gut is always protecting your boundaries. In those two examples, the first example, it was protecting my physical boundary, right? And then the second example is protecting my professional boundary. And sometimes it's just the boundary of your well-being. You walk into a space and you feel like, ooh, something feels wrong. There's something protecting you. You have to listen to that. But you also have to understand that sometimes it's not your gut that's speaking. Sometimes it's the feelings of trauma from before. Sometimes it's like maybe a little paranoia or anxiety. So you have to practice to be able to distinguish between those things. And the way you do that is taking inventory of moments in your life where your gut told you something and it was right. And just tap into that feeling. How did that feel? Because as I said, your gut usually doesn't have thoughts with it. It's just pure body reactions. Whereas the other things like anxiety, in my experience, usually has lots of thoughts, lots of confusion thoughts. And when those things happen, what usually helps is just to stay still. It's not to make a decision from that. So in my case, instead of rushing to pay this guy, I should have just waited. I should have waited, right? If you're not sure or in doubt of is it my gut or is it my trauma or is it my anxiety, just take a moment, take a beat and do a little bit more research and trust yourself. So just observe how the person is. So in the case of the video editor, again, it was the same thing where he just kept messaging me every morning, how are you and how is your day? And that is usually unnecessary in a professional encounter. They should give you space to make the decision. So someone is rushing you, someone is constantly, these things are crossing your boundaries. So you have to ask, is this crossing my boundary? Is this long-term thinking versus short-term thinking? Have I experienced this before? Is it my trauma? Maybe speak to someone that you trust. Okay, sometimes the feedback is not always the right ones. In my case of my first marriage, actually people had been warning me, but I did not necessarily listen. So then you can start to see the patterns. And I think life is all about looking at the patterns of where you missed the mark, but also looking at the patterns of where you were right. But usually when it comes to being with another person, you have to think, do I feel safe around this person? Do I feel at peace around this person? And sometimes your gut is not just about other people. Your gut is also telling you about things that you need to change about yourself. So that will be another video for another time, where sometimes the change is not about not doing things with other people or doing things with other people. The gut is sometimes about ourselves, understanding our patterns that lead us into situations where we make good decisions versus bad decisions, because it's something about us that we need to change. Like one of the big lessons for me has been try not always to be an over fixer of everything. Sometimes it's okay to be uncomfortable for the long-term gain. I remember before I close off, I had a boss when I was hired many years ago as an intern. I was really impatient about making money. Like I wanted a paid full-time job and I was very impatient about it. And she just turned to me and she said, Mariam, you got to think long-term. And those words stuck with me until today, because no one had ever taught me to think that way. I didn't come from a culture or society that thinks long term. And I believe that actually short term, long term thinking is very much linked to poverty as well, because we make hasty decisions on money because we just want a quick relief. Whereas long-term thinkers are investors. They're thinking the spouse I should marry is an investment. Everything should be thought of as a long-term investment for the ultimate success. But when we just want to just tick the box, get out of uncomfortable situations now, because right now we just want the quick fix, that usually your gut warns you against those, but we override it with other feelings, with other emotions, with our intellect. So let me know your experiences of where you worked very well with your gut, and then your gut actually helped you succeed? And give me examples where you ignored your gut and then later understood the job that your gut was doing. And I want to hear whether you agree with um, my concepts about the gut feeling when it comes to making good decisions versus bad decisions, and how your intellect and other feelings can also come to play.